Right, today we're going to reflect on ST 49.20, the Muni Sutta. Muni, M-U-N-I, the discourse on the silent sage. This is from the Sutta Nipata, SN 1.12. They're all verses here, so this is 15 verses, SN 207 to 211. The sutta is a very ancient sutta. It belongs to the group of most ancient texts, in fact, of the ancient texts of early Buddhism. And the theme is the nature of true sagehood. In other words, the earliest ideal of historical Buddhism. Now this Muni Sutta, with a total of 15 verses, can be divided up into three groups, three unequal groups. In group 1 you have 4 verses, SN 207 to 210 is a kind of introduction, and then the main sutta, the main teachings are found in group 2, SN 211 to 219, totaling 9 verses, and then the sutta concludes with the last 2 verses. Group 3, there is SN 220 to 221. Okay, now let's look at the translation, which is on page 142. I'm sure your books are the same.
Yes.
Okay, the discourse on the silent sage. From intimacy comes fear. From the household life dust arises. The house free, intimacy free, this is indeed the sage's vision. So in these 4 lines you have 2 aspects. You have the first 2 lines talk about the world, and the last 2 lines talk about the renounced life, spiritual life, the life of liberation. Fear arises from being attached to people, in other words, any kind of attachment and intimacy, especially based on sensual pleasures. So here, of course, it is the Buddha talking. He's talking about the renunciant. Of course, this truth also applies to lay people. When we are attached to someone, even when we know someone well, there is always this sense of fear of losing that person. And this is quite natural, in other words. So here, the sutta is just kind of like telling us this is the true nature of things, whereas the Muni has no such fear. And the second line says, from the household life, dust arises. Here, Rajo, dust, of course, refers to defilements. When dust gets in the eye, we can't see well, we get kind of blinded, at least momentarily. So here, if we live in a house, there's so many things we have to do, and some things are not very pleasant. Yes, there are pleasures of household life, but there's always waiting in the background, surely there's suffering and problems there. So that's the dust, and especially the dust of greed, hate and delusion, which we have to deal with. This is the package deal of household life, if you like. Then the last 2 lines, of course, tell us how to get out of this, is to leave the house, not to have any kind of intimate connection. In other words, instead of a biological connection, instead of connection based on the senses, here the Buddha is telling us we can relate to people on a higher level, on the level of the mind, of the heart, in other words. In other words, the concept of family here becomes bigger, kind of spiritual family. So this is the sage's vision of the true wise person. Now the next verse, SN 208. Whoever has uprooted the grown would neither plant what can grow nor water it. He is said to be one living alone as a sage. the great seer who has seen the state of peace. So here we have, in this verse 208, there is the plant imagery. Here, what can grow, of course, refers to karma, which is rooted in like, dislike, and so on. And to water it means to kind of be drawn to them through desire, through attachment. So, again here we see first two lines talking about the world, second two lines talking about the spiritual life. And the sage is the great seer. He understands the nature of life, and because he has found the state of peace. So the sage is not someone enjoying some religious status or celebrity status, rather he has attained this state of inner peace. So he doesn't need followers, doesn't want followers. Of course, those who meet him do benefit from him, even just by looking at him, he's so peaceful. And if you ask questions, of course, you grow in your wisdom. The next verse, SN 209. Having considered the field, crushed the seed, he would not sprinkle moisture upon it. He is indeed a sage who, seeing the end of birth and death, has given up thinking. He cannot be reckoned. So now we look a little bit deeper to the nature of the sage. Here the field is our actions, if you like, through body, speech and mind, and the seeds, of course, our karma, and we do not sprinkle any water, any moisture on it, like no more craving. So once the sage has overcome this field where the karmic seeds can grow through the water of craving, so this sage has overcome birth and death in that sense. He is not born, he will not die. And even in this life itself, he is different from us in the sense that he has given up thinking. Thinking here is a very big word in ancient Indian philosophy, in the Buddhist religion. Thinking includes planning, wanting, not wanting, all kinds of working of the mind, if you like. So here, since he has given up thinking, in other words, his mind is no more pushed or pulled by the five senses. So how do you reckon such a person? I mean, we can only know people through what we see, what we hear, smell, taste, touch. But in the case of the sage, he has kind of, he's not more attached to these senses. He feels, in other words, he directly experiences life. He is well alive, all right, and he's wise and he's happy. But when we come to thinking the way we think, you don't see that in the sage. In that sense, the sage is not troubled by any kind of thoughts. So because of that, you cannot really define him. People are defined by how they think, good, bad, famous, not famous, great, whatever. But here, he does not think. He doesn't have that aspect which we have, that philosophizing aspect, that desiring aspect. So he's one who cannot be reckoned. He's kind of a class of his own, so to speak. Knowing, next is verse SN 210, knowing all the roosting places, or knowing all the houses, if you like, Nivesana, he delights not in any of them. He is indeed a sage who is rid of greed, greed-free. He strives not, for he has gone to the far shore. Right? So here again we see the sage as someone who is awakened. In verse 208, it is said he has attained the state of peace, which is a term for nirvana. And here he has gone to the far shore, which is also another name for nirvana. Of course, nirvana has no name, we just gave these names to kind of refer to nirvana. So here, the far shore is this imagery of us being separated from nirvana. nirvana, by this water of samsara, by these dangerous waters which you have to cross. So the sage has gone across to the safe side, if you like. And because of that, he knows all the houses, all the resting places, in other words, the stations of consciousness, where consciousness arises through seeing, hearing, and so on. And also where consciousness can re-arise, can be reborn, all that he understands, and he has gone beyond all that. He does not delight in any of those, whether it is the sense world, or the formal or formless world. So he's totally clear of greed. Here, greed represents all the negative qualities that bring about karma and rebirth. He has given up all that. So he strives not. He is normal, driven to look for happiness or some kind of inner peace, because he already achieved it. So that ends group 1. Now group 2 starts with verse 211. He has overcome the all, knows the all, truly wise, unattached to all states, giving up the all, liberated through destroying craving. Him, indeed, the sage, him, indeed, the wise know as a sage. So this verse has a play on the word sabba, sarva in Sanskrit, the all. Here the all refers first of all to our 5 senses plus the mind, and what we create, the world we create with the 5 senses and the mind, the world we project, the world we live in, this virtual world we create, that is us, that is I, me and mine. So he knows all that, he understands, and through that understanding he is able to let go of all this, of the all. So in other words, he's free from all, so to speak. So here the all has a special meaning in how we create our world, in other words. So he doesn't create this world anymore for him. So in other words, no more suffering. Verse 212, whose power is wisdom endowed with moral virtue and habits, focus, delighting in meditation, mindful, free from attachment, free of mental barrenness, influx free, him indeed the wise know as a sage. So here, a little bit deeper into the mind of the sage, it is his wisdom that makes him free. Freedom, wisdom means here understanding things as they really are, knowing true reality. And yet, because of this, he is morally virtuous. He is not one with a so-called crazy wisdom. It's just a kind of a convenient name to hide a person's immorality, actually. So here he's truly kind of morally virtuous in his action and in his thoughts by nature. And he is peaceful, he loves meditation, and is mindful, because he is free from all any kind of mental defilements. And because of that, the wise know him as a sage. Verse 213. The sage wandering alone, heedful, unshaking before praise and blame, like a lion, untrembling before sounds, like the wind not caught in a net, like a lotus unsoiled by the waters, the leader of others, not to be led by others. Him indeed the wise know as a sage. So here we see the sage in contrast to society, if you like. So he wanders, but he's alone. Not lonely, but alone. And he is very careful, heedful. People may say nice things to him, may criticize him, may say, oh, this is just a loner, not caring for society. Or people may think he's a great saint, and he's not affected in any way by such. praise and blame. Like a lion, he's very calm no matter what sounds he hears. And he's free like the wind, you can't catch him even with a net. And he's pure like this lotus that rises from the mud and the dark waters. He's a leader of others. In other words, people get inspired seeing him, listening to him, and they follow him. So he does not follow others in that sense. He does not follow the crowd, definitely. So him the wise know as a sage, who is like a bathing post in a bathing place. When others speak to him in extreme terms, him the last free, whose faculties are well focused, him indeed the wise know as a sage. So notice every verse here in this second group, there is a refrain, him the wise know as a sage. So here is the image of a solid post sunk into the ground at the bathing place. This is usually in a river, and there is this pole where I suppose here either people hang their clothes or people use it to rub themselves maybe. Anyway, the idea is this pole is sunk to the ground, it is solid, unmoving, like the Indakila in other words, but this one is setting in water. So he's solid, stable, unmoving. So whatever people, no matter how people talk to him in extreme terms, even he's not trouble, because he's free from lust, free from all kinds of desires, and his faculties, his senses are all very calm and focused. So the wise know such a one as a sage, whose mind is steadfast indeed, straight as a shuttle, who is disgusted with bad deeds, discerning the uneven and the even, him the wise know as a sage. This is N2 and 5. So here the mind of the sage is calm, stable, and straight as a shuttle. That means he is able to focus directly at any object in his meditation or in his mindfulness, and he very well can discern good and bad, the even, the uneven and the even, and he rejects the bad. Who well restrained, well self-restrained, does no good, a sage, and does no bad, does no bad, a sage self-restrained towards the young and the middle age, who is neither led by anger nor angers anyone. Him indeed the wise know as a sage. So here when he relates to people, again he is mindful. There's a famous saying in the suttas, if a good monk would treat a younger woman as a sister, someone of the same age, as a young woman as a daughter, someone of the same age as a sister, and a woman is older as a mother. So here we see again a kind of spiritual relationship instead of a biological kind of family connection. So by reflecting in this way, there is a social distance of respect, and the connection is spiritual. So here he does not get angry whatever people say or do, neither does he. His actions would anger anyone, any normal person under normal circumstances, in other words. 217. Who lives on what is given by others will receive food scraps from the top, the middle, or the remains. Deigns neither to praise nor to speak lowly of it. This indeed the wise knows as a sage. So here the way the sage lives, he lives on alms, people give him food, whatever he gets, whether from the top of the pile of food or someone has eaten and just a little bit in the middle, or the remains of scraps, he eats them. He does not complain, does not command, does not kind of discuss what kind of food he likes or doesn't like. He eats as necessary to support life. So it's a simple life, in other words. Then 218, SN 218, the sage fares along, abstaining from coupling. Even in youth is not entangled anywhere, abstaining from drunkenness and heedlessness, fully freed. Him, indeed, the wise know as a sage. This is SN 218. So here we see the Buddha addressing the world, as it were, addressing people who are not yet sages, not yet even in the religious life, perhaps, kind of hinting to them that they can still be good, like the sage. Here, the sage abstains from coupling. It does not have any kind of sex at all, not even a partner, in other words. So elsewhere in the sutta, he has no second. The sutta will say he has no second, no dutiya, no partner. He's alone by himself in that sense. Even when he's young, he's not kind of caught up with people. In the case of, in other words, he was a young monk, a young sage. But this is an allusion to the recluse Siddhartha, who left home around 29. So even at that, he's quite young, considering. So at that age, people get married, have families, but he is unattached in that sense. And he does not get caught up with the world by drinking and becoming heedless, and in other words, losing his mind temporarily even. So in other words, the mind is a very important aspect of the Muni, that the mind is clear and unblemished. So it's never drunk, never intoxicated, whether with drinks or with negative states. SN 219. Knowing the world, he sees the highest goal, having crossed over the floods, the ocean, such a one whose knots are cut, unattached, influx-free, him, the wise know as a sage. So the sage he has reached the highest of evolution, if you like. He has attained this highest liberation. He is spiritually free. He has crossed over the floods that drag people to them, the floods of greed, of existence, of views and ignorance, the ocean of suffering. And his knots are cut. So that is a famous kind of illusion, especially among the chains. So these knots are the knots of ignorance that tie us, bind us, and so this knot is cut. So it's unattached, it's free from the world. Now we come to the last two, the concluding verses, verses 220 and 221. And these two verses do not have any refrain. The two, with far different dwellings and lives, are different. The householder supporting a wife, and the selfless one with good habits. The householder is unrestrained in destroying other lives. The sage restraint always protects living beings. So here, towards the end, the Buddha is telling us why there are renunciants, and how renunciants are different from the ordinary person like us, the family people. The sage keeps the precepts all the time. He's able to do that because of his attainment, his awakening, and his the nature of his life. He's different from the lay people because he does not have a wife, nor family. And in that sense, he can be totally selfless, keeping with the precepts. Lay people destroy lives, but he doesn't. That's the first precept. So in that sense, the sage is restrained in protecting all living beings. He will not hurt anyone. And now the last verse. Just as a blue-necked peacock flying through the sky at no time gains the pace of a swan, even so, a householder will never match a monk, a sage in seclusion, meditating in the forest. So here we have another pair of imagery comparing the sage, if you like, the renunciant. So here the sage is a swan. Okay? A swan moves fast enough, faster than a peacock. A peacock can't really fly very far, and this a peacock, a blue-necked peacock, as you know, this peacock is a beautiful bird, a very proud bird. So that's the layman. That's the layman with all their flamboyance and colors, and but that bogs down the layperson. So it's never able to fly very fast like the swan. The swan flies fast and far. So in this sense, the renunciant, the sage, is like the swan flying high in the sky, and he goes very far. So the life of the layman and the sage are very different in that sense. So this is very clear, where we should not confuse the life between a monk and a monastic or renunciant and a lay person. We see today there's this confusion. Even the word monk and nun are being used by married priests. So obviously such people either do not know these teachings or choose to ignore them, because there's a big difference here. The idea of celibacy, the idea of aloneness here, is not that sex is bad or having a family is bad. It's a choice we make. If you wish to really take this high way to awakening and attain full awakening in this way like a sage, then this is the path to let go of the world so that you can be in the world and really be able to inspire others to get out of their suffering. So it's a choice we make. It's not that you must do it. It's a choice that Buddha has given us. And it's wonderful to be able to choose either way, because if you follow the Buddha's teaching, of course, even if you live as a layman, you can still be happy, not as happy as a muni or a renunciant, but significantly happy if you keep to the training and the rules. So that's an example of how far we can attain with this mind that is liberated and joyful. So with that, we close our reflection, close our study, and now we do a short reflection. The Buddha's teaching reminds us of the best way we can choose to be truly happy, and that is the path of true renunciation, to be a sage, in other words, like the Buddha. And if that's not possible, then we can still live as a good layman, keeping the precepts, and we can still feel the joy and peace inside us, and sort of prepare ourselves in time to come for this higher life of sagehood. Reflecting in this way is good karma. With the power of this good karma, may we cultivate loving kindness for ourselves, to be well and happy, so that we can practice the true teaching and be at peace and joy with ourselves. By the same token, by the power of the three jewels, let us send out our loving kindness to our loved ones and those who have been kind to us and helpful to us. May they be well and happy. And also to those who are diligent in striving for happiness and awakening in this life itself. May they attain this higher peace and reach the far shore even in this life itself. And finally, by the power of the three jewels, may those who have difficulties in their lives, far away from the true teaching, may they see with joy the true teaching even in this life itself. May all beings be well and happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.